Alright, Lord Nitro 101 coming back at you on the YouTube. So this is the build that I've been playing sort of the last hour of my stream, probably for the last sort of week and a half. I feel that it's pretty well set in stone. I don't feel that unless Blizzard does something pretty dramatic, and whether they nerf the brand new Uliana set that we have, the brand new monk set, whether they alter what we can put into the Kanai's cube, um, percentage-wise, not so much what we can break down, and unless they alter sort of how the brand new sort of season 4 fist weapon that we acquire, or whether they alter the brand new season 4 gem, legendary gem that we acquire. So either way, I feel that this build is pretty well set. I've been able to mess around with it. I've been able to clear a greater rift 45 with it, and my gear is not ideally rolled. And at the time I did clear that 45, only 2 of my gems were actually level 25. So either way, let me fire into the game here and I can explain it. Alright, so here we are in the game itself. So the brand new set that we acquired was the Uliana set. It is brand new. It will be available in patch 2.3 as well as season 4. I'm currently on the PTR, so that's why you can't sort of play with this build or test it out unless you actually get on the PTR. So basically how the set works itself, it's one of these sets just like the Raymond build, whether you use the co-build that I play live on my stream, or whether you play the fire build, it still requires the full 6-piece set. So it comes in obviously full 6-piece set, you know the whole setup. So if you read the actual thing, what you get is, alright, for the 2-piece, every third hit of your spirit generator applies the exploding palm. Pretty important there. For the 4 set, your 7-sided strike deals its total damage with each hit. And for the 6-piece set, your 7-sided strike detonates your exploding palm. So it's sort of kind of like the build that we were playing in Season 2 that was the torch build. That kind of build where we're applying exploding palm, and back then we were dropping bells. So with this sort of build setup, it's back to the exploding palm, but now takes advantage of the 7-sided strike, which is really cool for the monk because it wasn't really an ability that we'd use very often. Some of the sort of earlier builds, sort of after Inferno kind of coming into Reaper of Souls, we used to use 7-sided strike in some Tempest Rush builds. If you came up against something really difficult, a very difficult elite pack while you were speed farming in Tempest Rush, you would use the 7-sided strike to finish off the pack. But to actually have a full set that I think is really cool. Alright, so I'll run down the pieces themselves. Firstly, I'll start out with the set pieces itself. Mine are not bad. They could clearly be rolled much better. But it was more about establishing the build, more about the playstyle, than actually taking the time to, min-max each individual piece to make sure that you got the best out of it. I'm still sort of undecided about the amulet itself. I think obviously the Hellfire amulet will be the best in slot for this build, partly because not only can you gain an elemental damage, you can also gain your crit chance, your crit damage, but you can also gain whatever passive that Hellfire amulet rolls. And if it can play pretty important in this particular build, because then you could gain either more of an offensive passive or maybe a defensive passive. It just depends. Alright, so how the build actually came about, I was kind of thinking of a build that not only could I do greater rift runs, sort of like speed runs with, but would also be very effective in Torment 10. I'm currently in a Torment 10. I will show you guys some gameplay footage as well. I'll play it live. It won't be recorded, so you'll actually see what I'm doing. So basically, how the set works is you acquire the 6 pieces. Um, Try when you gain the boots, get your dex bite, your all res. Try to gain the exploding palm damage there. It's pretty critical. It'll help you for your damage output. Um, Same thing with the shoulders. I think probably the best ones are kind of like the ones that we're using in the cold build and the fire build for the Raymond set. You probably would want to go dex, your all res, get your 7-sided strike damage there, and a cooldown. Cooldown's very important in this build, at least the early sort of stage. I found it pretty important. Um, Same thing, so you would go after the primaries on all your pieces. Um, and in some cases, depending on how they roll, it may be very, very important to get some life regen on them. I find that you can be pretty squishy because of your vitality. In the build right now, I'm at 516k life. I think it's definitely too low, so it makes yourself a little bit squishy, but it's all about timing in this build, making sure that you have enough cooldown so all of your skill sets actually proc as quickly as you can. Pretty important. Alright, so I'll go over the set itself. So you would definitely go, I explained the boots, the pants, you go dex bite. If it rolled the secondary resist, um, then you could go armor and that kind of stuff. But primarily, these are the pants you're looking for. Get your dex bite, your all res. A life after kill is really, really good on there. Health glows, that kind of stuff. Chest armor, you could go dex bite. You could actually have your damage on there as well. You can gain 7-sided strike damage, that kind of stuff. I would probably recommend going dex bite. If you end up with a secondary resist there, I would actually roll it so you would gain the reduction from elites by 11%. I think that would be really, really important there. Okay, now these are the items I was talking about at the very beginning of the video that are Season 4 exclusive items. The brand new weapon that we gain is the Lion's Claw, which is kind of cool because for the last 2 seasons we have acquired bracers as our seasonal rewards, which are cool and are very, very effective in our builds, which is kind of ironic going forward into this next patch 2.3 as well as into Season 4. Both of those bracers will be important for this build, and I'll explain it when I get to the items that you would put into the Kanai's cube. So basically what this weapon does, if you read just the affix on itself, 7-sided strike performs an additional 7 strikes. That's pretty critical. So this, it aids that possibility of a 14 7-sided strike to your target. So that's pretty critical. So I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to be nice to finally have a weapon. Like I said, for the last 2 seasons, we have acquired bracers, and they've been very, very critical for the builds that we're playing. But it's nice to actually get a weapon. So that's going to be something you'll definitely be looking for. It's pretty critical for this build and the way it's designed. The other item that you'll definitely need for this build to be efficient and effective is a fist weapon called the Fist of Azeroth. And this basically, if you look, ideally for just a secondary affix, Exploding Palm on death explodes its damage, increases by, in this case, I've got 90%. You'd want that much, much higher, but this was the one I happened to find at the time I was doing this. And it seems to be effective, but you'd obviously want it, 95 to 100. I had tested several different rings back and forth and back and forth. I just found that in this particular build that the focus and the restraint just seemed to be the best combination. Will that change? It depends really on what Blizzard decides to do. If they alter the focus and the restraint sort of set bonuses, we'll have to figure that out. But yes, the focus and the restraint, the 2 I have did not roll very well, but it was more about getting the pieces and testing them out and see what the limitations are. So basically the focus and the restraint, the two-piece that you gain when you hit a resource generating attack or a primary skill, deal 50% increase more damage for 5 seconds. The other one is when you hit a resource spending attack, you deal 50% more damage for 5 seconds. So pretty powerful rings. They're pretty powerful in the build that we're currently playing, or at least I am playing on Season 3 right now, called the Cold build, using the Raymond set. So pretty well, basically what you end up doing is you're stacking an awful lot of exploding palm damage, as well as increasing your 7-sided strike. And when I get to the skills and the passives, it will understand why that new piss weapon that we acquire is very, very critical. And then one thing they added, which was not listed on anything that was data mined, or even on the listing of items it will gain for the next season, as well as the next patch, is a brand new belt called the Binding of the Lost. And if you read the secondary, it's kind of like the other belts that we were using before, where you were able to stack a double vitality, your main stat, your dexterity, and an all res. But what's really critical about this belt is the secondary legendary affix they put on it. Each hit with 7 strike grants you 3.4% damage reduction for 7 seconds. So basically, every time you're in 7-sided strike, you're taking less damage for that amount of time. So that's pretty critical. Okay, so basically how I ended up with the gems, I was thinking I tested like the Ice Blank, the Teuk, the Intoxication Gem. I even tested the Pain Enhancer, and for whatever reason, I sort of set on the gems that I'm using currently. So right now, I'm using the Bane of the Trapped, because it reduces their movement speed, which is pretty critical in this particular build. I'm using the brand new Season 4 exclusive gem called the Bane of the Stricken. And if you read this, each attack that you make against an enemy increases the damage it takes from your attacks by, in this case, I have it just leveled up to 25, is 1.50%. Here's the other critical thing that's really cool about this gem. When you get it to level 25, you gain 25% increased damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. Massive, massive. Especially if you get up against a really tough Rift Guardian that has some really hard affixes that you have problems with, that's going to be pretty critical. So I do like that. And to maximize your cooldowns, once again, the Swiftness gem, same thing. It just allows you to speed up your attack speed, but what we're really after is the secondary at level 25. Gain 1% cooldown reduction per stack of Swiftness. Pretty important, in my opinion, in this build. Alright, so let's cover... so if you were going to be testing some of this just as 2.3, and even going into Season 4, as you're sort of putting this set together, I would actually take out the Bane of Stricken, and I would probably use the 2 defensive gems, which is the Gizzard Gem and the Gem of Alteration, right? Those would be the 2 more defensive gems that I would probably recommend. As for the belt itself, I still recommend using the Binding of the Lost, but you may not find it right away. It did take me some time to acquire it. So I would recommend probably going back to the good old Vigilante belt, because we gain our cooldowns there, right? So it just depends on if you're kind of struggling and you think you need to, the cooldowns much higher and are more important than your survivability while in 7-sided strike. It's one of the other belts that you could use. I mean, obviously, if you want to go push, sort of more glass cannon kind of, let's just crank my DPS up, you could use the Witching Hour. But I would find that same thing with the set, that we're running right now and currently in Season 3. I think our cooldowns and our defensive stats are pretty important to have on our belt. And anytime we can pick up any kind of legendary affix that helps us, I think that's more beneficial. Alright, so I will go to the Kanai's Cube. This is one of the exclusive brand new cool things that they've added in 2.3, as well as it will go live in Season 4. I have explained it in my other YouTube video, so I won't go into a great deal of detail. Basically, what I've done is I've broken down the items. After you do bounties, you acquire the materials, you put the legendary item in there, and you break it down so you gain the legendary affix off of it. So what I have equipped in here right now is the Flow of Eternity, which reduces my cooldowns of 7-sided strike by 60%. My Gundo gear, Exploding Palm, on death explosion applies, Exploding Palm to anything in my surrounding. And just as a test, this is probably not finalized. This is something I will change, but I'm definitely liking what it does. I'm using the elements ring, and because when you break it down, because at this moment we're getting the maximum out of the item that we put in there, it's 200%. So I think that's pretty critical. All right, so from there, how I would I'll cover basically how I've been assigning my Paragon points. Though I'm only 267, which is way behind a whole bunch of people that are playing on the PTR right now, but it was more about the build itself and where I would actually put things. So I would think critical in this build would probably be start out with your resource cost reduction, life on hit, and then area damage. In this build, area damage would be very effective, but I think it's more important to get your defensive ones up as much as you can and as quickly as you can. Defensive one, because you're really squishy in this build, and most of us will be until we gain definitely more Paragons as we level up, I would really focus on more of the life regen, the resist all, armor, and then life. So I would try to spread them out a little bit, but I would think I would start out with the life regen, because you do have moments of downtime, especially when you're going to be starting out, so you'll want to regen as much as you can. Very important to get your all res up as well. So these will be sort of the sort of stages as we go along, and then we level up. Offensive, once again, in most monk builds, you got to start out with your cooldown reduction. Get that one maxed out as quick as you can, and then like we always do, we balance crit chance and crit damage. I would go more crit chance to begin with, and then slowly focus on your crit damage, and then leave attack speed to last. The core, I would make sure that you get your movement speed up to 25%, which is the maximum. Then slowly start stacking a little bit more into vitality, then you can raise your damage up. I didn't have any problem with the maximum spirit, so that would be sort of last in my opinion in this particular build. I didn't find it necessary, or at least yet. Alright, so that is sort of the construction of the build itself. And like I said, as long as Blizzard doesn't alter the sort of gems and the gear itself, as well as the Uliana set, I think it'll be pretty effective. I have been farming in T10 with it. I have done greater rifts with it, up to 45 so far. I haven't really pushed it much further than that, but I think it's pretty effective. Alright, so what I'll do, just to give you guys a test, I'll push myself a little bit harder. Let's just say I'll go into a greater rift level 35, which is because we acquired the new torment levels. It now goes 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now, because of the alteration that they've done to the way rifts are worked, it'll actually show you what torment level and what scaling it is as you're going up. So I'll throw a 35 in there, and I'll hit accept. My follower right now does not have a token on it that keeps him alive. So if you suddenly see him die, then you'll understand why. So basically, how it plays out, you will go in and attack, and you will just you know, apply your primary attack, get it going, hit a spender, and then hit 7-sided strike. With all of this being done, I find it's pretty good. I do find myself a little squishy against certain packs, but I do find that if you do get in any kind of danger, all you really have to do is just turn on your empathy. And you'll find that it's pretty effective that way. So you just, you hit your spender. I'm using the Mantra of Salvation. So as you can see, you can pretty well go through a lot of the content pretty fast. And this is me with much lower Paragons. And yes, I understand it's only a level 35 Greater Rift, but it's pretty good progression. Seeing how my gear's not completely optimized, I'm pretty close to the levels that you are speed farming right now currently on season 3. So it's not bad. It's not bad. Like I said, you just have to make sure that your timing is right. That kind of stuff. And like you see, pretty easy down, right? So I'm hoping that I will actually be able to get that far as I progress, and that quickly. So that's pretty good. All right, so that's pretty well it, guys. That's the build in its nutshell, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm sorry about the silence there, but it was one of those things you just have to sort of focus on. And I wanted to actually show you guys the gameplay, which is why I'm not actually using an overlay at all. So that's the build. Basically, what I've done is now that you've seen the build and play, I'll show you the skills and the passes I'm currently using. Um, right now, I'm using Way of 100 Fists Annihilation. If you find that your survivability is a little bit lacking because of your life in this particular build, you could also change it to go Crippling Wave Sanomi. Um, it's one of those wings where it actually sort of freezes your target, which would probably give you a little bit more life and a chance to actually hit your target. I have sort of messed around with Breaking Wave, but it's just it works and it is effective. But I find that Way of 100 Fists actually just procs much better. So it's one of those two things that you could go back and forth. But if I was actually going to do, if I found myself a little bit squishier than I needed to be, then I would actually go Crippling Wave Tsunami. I think that's just a much better thing because of its freeze. Alright, so the Exploding Palm, as long as they don't do, Blizzard doesn't do anything weird and wonderful with our Exploding Palms, still the Exploding Palm of choice is, of course, Impending Doom, which is the cold one, because it's 6,305 damage-wise, so it's still pretty powerful. As for the seven-sided strike, if you look at all of them, really, the lightning one, though, it does, you teleport to an enemy and increases your damage. I just don't find that it's going to hit hard enough. The other ones really don't do any great damage output. So it's probably more important to actually use sustain attack, which actually reduces the cooldown of the seven-sided strike by 14 seconds. That's why I was actually able to go into seven-sided strike much quicker, and it's going to be very important to actually do that. So it's one of those things where I don't think we have much of a choice until an awful lot more experimenting actually starts to happen. So that's primarily what I would do with there. I'm using Dashing Strike Way of the Falling Star just because it increases my movement speed. In this build, it's not so much the Raymond set where we're in there and sort of attacking. In this particular build, it's all where your positioning is, what you're standing in. In this build in particular, you're going to be very squishy to most ground effects, unless you're wearing a particular immune amulet. So it's one of those things I wanted to have much more movement speed. Um, with Empathy Desert Shrub, it's one of our go-to sort of thing. It just infuses yourself with sand, reduces the damage taken by 50%. Pretty critical if you're coming up against double elite packs. Pretty well the go-to sort of skill for most monks because of its defensive. Mantra Salvation, Agility. This one could be changed. You could probably use, like Mantra of Healing, sort of like, Heavenly Body, you could use that one, Time of Need, any of the ones that would actually help keep you alive, right? So it would be more of a healing thing if you're finding that you're really squishy and are having a lot of problems. But I still think the Mantra Salvation, Agility is probably the better way to go. Pretty well the ones that won't change. I'm still sort of undecided about one of the particular passive skills. Obviously, our Harmony, it's one of our go-to ones. It helps our all-res. It's just one of those things that you can't really take off of most builds. Same thing with the Beacon of Yatar. It's one of our passives that are just so critical for us. Reduces all of our cooldowns by 20%. That's pretty huge. Near-death experience is just because you're really, really squishy in a lot of environments, and a lot of ground effects can do an awful lot of damage to you. I just like the near-death experience because it can keep you alive. It's one of those survivability things that I think is pretty critical. Now this one here I'm sort of undetermined with, which is kind of ironic because it's actually called determination. This particular one, each enemy within 12 yards increases your damage by 4% up to a maximum of 20%. And because of the way you're sort of moving with this, and you're constantly going around and around and trying to move through the mobs as quickly as possible, you're going to have more, right? There'll be more around you. This one here I'm still sort of working with. I think that you could probably use, in some cases, depending if you want to increase your damage, you could use like Unity. Another one I was messing around with was Momentum. Moving 24 yards increases your damage by 20% for 6 seconds. It's one of the ones I've tested as well. So it's one of those things I'd like to push into a much higher greater rift and test both of these out to see which one is more important. But I feel because with the determination, you're in higher greater rifts, the mobs should be more, like you should be surrounded more. So I think that's one of the passives that might be pretty important. The other one I was sort of looking at was Mystic Rhythm, but it just depends on how quickly you can use your spenders, right? So I mean, I definitely think it's probably one or the other, but if you look at the damage output, between determination and Mystic Rhythm, of course you gain only 20% there. With Mystic Rhythm you gain 40%. So it's one of those two things that can be interchanged, but I still think it's very, very, very gear dependent. So it's one of those things that's why I've stated that it's a build in progress, and we'll sort of have to see how it goes as I progress. If the build changes in any way, I will do an update to it. It really comes down to what Blizzard is going to do, and we're hearing rumors that they may nerf some of our exploding palm damage from Impending Doom. That number may drop, so that may change. They may nerf the percentages of what we can break down into the Kainos cube. So it varies depending on what they're going to do, because this is the PTR and everything is subject to change. But that's the build, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I did ramble on a little bit, but I'm trying to do my video is much shorter in time span, but try to get the information out to you guys much more quicker. Alrighty, guys, so that is it for me. Thank you guys all for watching the video. And look for more videos to come, especially with the new patch 2.3 coming soon, as well as Season 4. Alright, thank you very much.